And we are back on Take Action News. This is Richard Eskow, and our guest in this segment is Robert Borosage. Bob Borosage is the founder and president of the Institute for America's Future in Washington and co-director of its sister organization, the Campaign for America's Future. I've got to pronounce the name right because I work there as a senior fellow. Bob is also contributing editor at The Nation, and you can see his writing at the Huffington Post and elsewhere. Bob, thanks so much for being with us.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Good, very good.
Good. Well, obviously the topic du jour is the State of the Union. I wanted to ask you a couple things about that. First of all, you complimented the president for his attitude towards at least making the case for diplomacy, but we're focusing on domestic policy here. And about that, you wrote, passive voice populism doesn't cut it. It doesn't help people understand how we got here nor how we got out. On the new populism, the president chose to punt. What do you mean by that?
Well, the president, the speech itself, I think, scrubbed almost all of the populism out of it. But he did have one central pivot where he said, look, even though we're in recovery, the hard fact is it's not working for most Americans. Inequality is deepening. The rich are making out, but most Americans aren't seeing any rewards, and too many people still don't have jobs. So there was this kind of frame that is the populist frame of an economy that's working for the few and not for the many. But his description about why that is for many decades this has been building up because of globalization and technology. Two impersonal, anonymous, remorseless forces that presumably are beyond human control and happened to us. And that's a very passive voice about how we got to this state of an economy that only works for the few, as opposed to the reality that, the corporations and the elites decided in the mid-'70s they didn't like the arrangements, and they started to dismantle the arrangements that were built during the New Deal and World War II that helped create the broad middle class. And they did trade and tax policies that helped multinationals ship jobs abroad and drive down wages at home. They did taxes that brought taxes down on the rich and built loopholes that only they could take advantage of. They slashed spending on basic infrastructure needs and investments for our future. They did a range of things. They deregulated finance, obviously, and allowed Wall Street speculation to build until it blew up the economy. And middle-class families and homeowners were the victims of that. And so the fact is this was done to us by people who benefited from it. But the president wanted not to have anything to do with that kind of active voice populism. He had kind of a passive voice populism, which says, look, we're in this state, but it's because of these remorseless and anonymous forces.
Or as they used to say in my old neighborhood, hey, what are you going to do? So if we move to an active voice, first of all, I guess before I even get to what active voice populism would look like, I guess, what's your best guess? How's this going to play publicly? Because my sense is people are angry. People know who they're angry at. How do you think? We're in an election year. Congress is certainly, I don't want to say up for grabs because I don't think the Democrats will get it, but it's in contention. Senate up for grabs. How do you think this is going to play politically, this passive voice approach to populism?
Well, I think the specifics of the agenda the president put out, raise the minimum wage, paycheck fairness for women, change our workplace rules so they're not like the era of Mad Men, but give paid family leave and paid vacation and what have you. All those specifics are very popular, and all of them are opposed by the Republican Party. And so he's drawing a set of lines there that I think are, and a set of fights to come that will make it clear to people who's on what side. On the other hand, I do think that, look, if you're going to go into passive voice, if it is remorseless things that have done this to us, then the sense is nothing can be done to change them. It's just globalization, it's happening to everybody. Technology, we have fewer jobs because we don't need so many people to work, and you just gotta, what can be done? You just gotta live with it. And so it takes the energy out of the position. If you go to active voice populism and you name names, you talk about the interests and the people and the elites that have done these rules and the rules they did that rigged the game for the rich, then there's two things. One is you gain a great deal of credibility. People get that you're on their side and you're prepared to take these people on. And the other is you have a harder time raising money. Because the rich get really angry at you, and the corporations get really angry, and you build a lot of very powerful enemies. And so for politicians, you got to decide. And I think it is the case that the public increasingly gets, in this post-occupied moment we're in, they get that the rules are rigged. And they've got politicians like Elizabeth Warren, leaders who are prepared to say that and to name names and to challenge the way the rules got rigged. And that increasingly, I think, as that voice gets louder and draws more attention, other politicians are going to have to decide where they stand in relationship to that. And it's going to be notable where they stand, whether they're prepared to be clear about what side they're on and who rigged the system, or whether they're prepared to be passive about it.
And if you're a member of Congress at this point, that's not an easy decision sometimes. You and I have both talked to members of Congress who know, for example, they can name you the guys who were tough on banking and told it like it was, and then they came in and spent $3 million on their opponent in the district as a form of payback. So they know, on the one hand, I'd hate to be a progressive member of Congress right now in certain districts. So let's strategize for a second. What do you do if you're sitting on the fence on this one? You'd like to say the right thing. You're afraid of that money coming your way, and you're a member of Congress. Where do you turn? How do you shape your rhetoric? Who can back you up? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think you do two things. If you're in a swing district and you're really vulnerable, so that a lot of these progressives are in very democratic districts, they're not going to get beaten, and they should be full-bore active populists and naming names and going out after it. Secondly, if you do that in a visible way, even if you're in a swing district, you can raise a lot of money from small donations around the country, as Elizabeth Warren has demonstrated, that can back you up, and you can get a lot of volunteers, and you can get a lot of energy in that position. Or if you're more cautious and more scared than that, you can pick your spots. You don't have to go after everybody. You can decide, I'm going after the banks, not the multinationals, but I'm going after the banks. I'm going to make that clear. And you can contribute to the debate even while you're, keeping quiet about other things, because you want to keep some bridges to different parts of the community that's financing your campaign, or who you don't want to finance your opponents so much. And that's what politicians have to do. They have to figure out how they're going to survive. But I think what's different now and what's interesting is with the development of real leaders with a platform and a megaphone who are out there naming the names and challenging this stuff, that increasingly politicians are going to have to factor that in. They aren't going to just be able to have passive voice and get away with it. They're going to have to increasingly decide are they going to be part of this process, or are they going to stand outside of it and lose that energy.